All right, so I'll just use my working space and click OK. And here's how the artwork looks right now. It does have this texture from my photo from the day, that I took it, but it's close enough to what I want to do. So I'm going to duplicate the layer in Photoshop, so I have two, and I'm going to keep one hidden so that if I need to come back to that original one, I can. And on the one that I now have showing, I could consider, if I want these lines to be darker, doing that first. And the doing that I'm talking about is to do an adjustment to the levels, meaning the range of shades from white to black, or the levels of gray. This is the levels dialog box and has a lot of functions for doing different things to images, grayscale, or color balance. But the first thing I want to tell it to do here is I want to tell it by clicking on this black eyedropper that I want to make this pixel right here at the edge of this pomegranate drawing line black. This is now going to be black. When I click right there, it's going to turn this gray line to black. So it did. It turned that pixel to black. It also turned all these other pixels into something else too. So here is the white color picker, and I want to make the background white. So you can see why having a good scan or a good photograph is really important. I really don't mind that it looks like this. It has a nice texture to it. But scan it the best you can, or get it professionally scanned if you care about how textury it is. And then this represents the midtones, and if I slide the slider towards the black slider, it makes a greater amount of highlights in the midtones, and this way it makes the midtones darker. Okay, so I'm going to call that looks right. Click OK. And I might also want to take out all color from that, because even though it's supposedly grayscale, it's really not. It's really not grayscale. It does have color in it, and it is a color image. So the next step I would do would be adjustments, hue, saturation. And one could argue maybe I should have done this first, but you can try it different ways and see what you think. So if I go and take the saturation out, it means take the color out of the color. Notice if I slide this up, I get this crazy effect where any colored pixels are amplified. The color is amplified, and this is de-amplifying, or taking color out of color. There is zero saturation or -100 saturation of color. There's no color in it now. It just looks grayscale, but it's still in a color image. Now I'm going to undo this all. Command Z, and go back to there. Okay? So I could do it this way. I could go Image Adjustments and go to Hue, Saturation and take out all the color first. Now it has no color. And it's really dark over here, so I should probably have been looking at that. Command L for levels, and here's the black point picker. I might want to zoom in. I can do Command plus and zoom in while I'm in the dialog box, and I'll tell this to be my darkest pixel. And then I'll tell this to be my lightest pixel here. Oh gosh. So I like my first method better. It works better for me. Okay. When you are working in Photoshop, for people who haven't done it a lot, there's a history panel. And here's my history panel. I can go back steps. Right. So now you can see there is a method to my madness. I've done a lot of these kinds of things before. So again, levels. Now I'll make something white. Boom. And then I'll zoom in. Z. Click. Oops. Zoom in. Z. Doesn't want to zoom in. Command plus. And then here again, I'm repeating those steps. And there's now my new black point. Command minus. Geez, it looks kind of crappy over here. So now that's lighter. This is medium. This is white. So I'll go back to there. That's good enough. So you'll have to adjust that and make yourself happy. Command U is hue, saturation. So now I'm back where I was a couple of steps ago. Now this layer here is the drawing layer, and this is hiding. I'm going to add a new layer. There's the new layer right there. I'm going to put the drawing above it, and with the drawing layer selected, this is key, I'm going to change its blending mode to multiply. This is the part that you want to make sure in the video that you're watching. So there, now that is set on multiply. What that does is it makes all of the true whites clear, and any other grayscale pixel still stays gray. So how do I know that that's true? Well, I'm going to press Z for zoom and click in over here on this pomegranate. I'm almost done with this demo. And here's a red color, maybe that's just too red. And here's a brush, yada yada, here's a brush. Oh, it's really large. I'm going to use the left bracket key, the ones that live next to the P's. And here I'm going to check that my opacity for this brush is on something less than 100%. And I don't really have anything fancy or texture in the brush, but I'm painting it on this layer. This is the layer where I'm putting the color, and this is the layer here where I have the drawing that I have already adjusted. And here from the panel options, I'll go ahead and just make that bigger so you can see that better, okay? The drawing is on multiply. The color layer is just on normal, but what if I start to color here, I get, look, the lines stay. Okay, so I'm going to undo that and go into the brush tools, and here's a nice soft brush. Click that, some kind of crazy angle. And I have all these different textures of brushes, so just mess around here. Here's a soft brush. And as I start to paint, it's at opacity 40. And so here, 47. So here I'm painting. If I let go, make the brush smaller, here I can shade this. So after a while, when you start doing these, you start seeing these really interesting kinds of effects that you get from layer and color. You can also, erase, but essentially here, I'll just zoom out and I'll put just a few dots here, here, and here. Yes, it's really time consuming, and no, I'm not gonna, paint this whole thing, but that's how you start. The brush is just a normal brush, and then after a while, you like look at it and you go, oh my gosh, there's this line here. So essentially you're coloring it in, but know that you can use different types or stylizations of brushes, and most importantly, if you take a look under the panel called brush, there is a panel called brush. This is the brush panel. From the brush panel is a flyout. Here is a little flyout, and closed it, my bad, brush. Each one of these brushes here that's set in here have various settings. So if I scroll through, and you click on a brush, this is kind of a neat thing. You can see that it has a thing called shape dynamics and smoothing. So here I've got this spiral brush, and if I paint, and you want to just make sure that you're staying on the correct layer when you paint. Make sure that you're painting on the color layer, don't paint on the drawing layer. So you want to be really aware of that, and you can continue to add layers, and these layers will interact with each other. So if I change my color to yellow, this is just a very quick demo. I overlap these and then change the blending mode, to like overlay. You start mixing colors and getting a lot of really beautiful effects. So it is time consuming, but really fun to paint this way. There are a trillion different types of brushes, and if you go to the brush presets versus the brush palette, okay, this is the brush presets, and this is the brush presets, and this is the brush palette. Each one of these has various and sundry starter brushes that you can begin painting with. It can get very complex and time consuming, so you might also think about, like, if you were going to paint this, how you might want to make one layer that's just the blue and then start painting the brown on top of that on another layer, and then the next color on top of that, so you don't go insane. When you're starting to paint with brushes, a really good tip I'm going to give you is that we've got the ability with these brushes, if you have a Wacom tablet, to create different kinds of strokes. And I want to give this like a brownish kind of a color. A tip that can be really helpful for saving time is that if you click and hold the shift key, I need to zoom in, if I click and hold the shift key, it'll make a line. So it's connecting the dots. So depending on what kind of a texture that you might want, this is a way to get some realistic looking bark thing happening here. If I mix a different color, you can get kind of wild and get carried away and then want to start over. But you can just click and drag, and you're mixing colors together. This is on its own layer right there. There's an E for erase tool, and here this is just color on that layer, so I could kind of clean off that edge. So
how'd you minimize the brush size with the macro there?
So the brush size changing, is that what you mean?
What'd you do on the keypad, basically?
Yeah,
I used to know how to do it.
No worries. So if I just grab a brush here, this brush right now is some size.
150.
Okay, it's 150 right there. And if you look at your keyboard, the letter P, to the right of it are two keys for brackets, and so the left bracket increases the size and the right bracket decreases the size.
Thanks.
Sure. So, you might even just want to start by creating a gradient of color and then hiding that gradient and then painting the thing over it. So let's just pretend that I had started with a layer here that had a gradient on it. Last thing on this one, and I'll open up the gradient panel and pick something I already have that's sky-like. So I just clicked right there to select that gradient. I could have scrolled down there, and then here I'll click and drag. So there's the bottommost layer. Let's go this way. No, let's go this way. Yeah. Oops, no, let's go this way. Okay, I'm done. All right, and then as you see, as it builds up, you can start seeing what needs to go where, and you can hide and show layers. As you fill in the brown tree, you can hide the background layer. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, yes, question?
So multiplying is for not coloring the edges that you have already black, right?
Well, if I really wanted to, I could paint it really accurately and then hide the black layer at the end, but right now it's just not enough filled. You could also do, let's say here on this yellow layer, I'm going to select this yellow layer and I'll zoom in here on the text because this is probably going to be a pretty serious painting job here. I probably wouldn't paint that whole thing. I would use this lasso tool. This is the polygon lasso to click and select. This is why it's art. And select the areas of this work. So, if you're doing a really cool design, for a long time I didn't have any friends because all I wanted to do was this. And seriously, now if you're my friend, you have to know that I'm going to be like working on stuff constantly. So now I'm married and I have a great partner who understands that pretty much, if we don't have plans, this is what I'm doing. All right, so I have this one letter, and now I can fill it with yellow. So B is for brush, and I'm filling it. It's at 47%, so now I'll make it at 100%. I really will on this layer, and this layer is on overlay, so I need to put it on normal, maybe. Okay, so now it's filled with yellow, and then maybe I want a gradient in that yellow, so here I could sample this orange and then B back to brush here and just paint a little orange on the bottom. All right, that's too hard of a brush, so you're gonna be changing your brush style. Here's a soft brush, and this color is probably not orangey enough. There we go. And then I might want to look at it, without the blue. Hide and show. So yes, it's hugely time consuming and really fun. Right, and you just keep making layers. You might want to name them. This could be the pomegranate layer, this could be the type layer, and there's the background layer. So that's one I wanted to show tonight, how to fill something that you've already drawn and make it look amazing, which this doesn't look amazing, but you get the idea. All right, friends, so I'm going to stop right there. So that's that one.